All right. So thanks for bearing with us, everybody. But I'm so happy you're here and we're joining our friends from around the world on Zoom. So welcome to the Color Literacy Forum number 5. I'm Luann Stovall. I'm the host of the Color Literacy Forums. We are so excited to bring you this as our first hybrid event. So hence the tech stuff, but we got it. We're live here from Color Impact 2023, Color and the Human Experience. And we are at the Rochester Institute of Technology, which I'm calling Ground Zero for Color Science, and the home of the Munsell Color Science Lab. So this conference is an amazing fusion of color science meets color in art and design, which occupy very different spaces, and there's some overlap, and we are really working to continue to have more and more communications between us. The idea is to establish healthy lines of communication. So we are thrilled to be joined by all of our participants on Zoom. So welcome everybody. From myself and our panel and everybody in the room, we're saying hello to you. For everybody on Zoom, we are inviting you to use the chat box. Tell us who you are, where you're from, university, professional organization, so we can learn more about each other in this global collaboration. So just a brief introduction about the Color Literacy Forum. It's focused on post-secondary education and it's an initiative of the Color Literacy Project. Our long-term goal is to offer foundational, science-based color education for all levels from pre-K through post-secondary to industry professionals and the public at large. 21st century color literacy is interdisciplinary, not just for scientists and artists, but for everyone. The project is a joint collaboration. Pull the next slide up. Sorry. Hold on. My slide is not advancing, Bill. Yeah, we have.
Oh.
Okay, we're not going to worry about that slide if we don't have it, but okay, I will go ahead and read it while we're working on that.
There you go.
There we go. Okay, great.
I think we were clicked on that black bar instead of there.
Okay. The project is a joint collaboration of the Color Literacy Project in partnership with the AIC, the Inter-Society Color Council, and Cumulus, the leading global association for art and design research. Today's forum is Color and the Perceiver, Part 3, in a 4-part series on color perception, one of the cornerstones of the Color Literacy Project. The first forum, it was in December, was focused on light. The second on materials. And the subject of the fourth, it's going to be in September, so mark your calendars to watch for the date, will be color in context. The format today is a panel discussion with our 3 esteemed speakers, Dr. Ronnier, Dr. Maria Olkkonen, and Bill Fischer. Our moderator today is Dr. Robin Kingsborough, who is a member of the Color Literacy Project, president of the Color Research Society of Canada, and a trained astronomer, painter, and educator who teaches at York University. Online, we have monitoring the chat box from Zoom is Ingrid Calvo-Ivanovic, who will be monitoring questions, and she is a color designer and consultant from Milan. So the 3 speakers today will give their presentations first, followed by a Q&A with all speakers. So jot down your questions, keep them in mind, and we'll just do all our Q&A after all the talks. So with that said, the first speaker I'd like to welcome is Dr. Ronnier. And
hi, I'm Robin Kingsborough. I'm going to introduce our speakers and moderate the panel. And just a note, everyone in Zoom land, please make sure all your mics are off for the whole time. And any comments, anything you just need to put in the chat. So Ronnier is a professor at the College of Optical Science and Engineering, Zhejiang University in China. He received his PhD from the Bradford University in the UK on color science in 1986. He has published over 750, just a handful, peer-reviewed papers in the field of color science, imaging science, and illumination engineering. He is a fellow of Society of Dyers and Colorists and of Imaging Science and Technology. He's been an active member of CIE, ex-vice president, ex-division director on color and vision, technical chairs. He has received numerous awards, including the Judd Award in 2017 from the AIC and the Newton Award in 2020 from the Color Group of Great Britain for his contribution to color science research. So please welcome Ronnie.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my
Go ahead, I'm just gonna get you.
my great pleasure, right, is to attend.
Switch places.
Yeah. It's my great pleasure to attend this color literacy, symposium. Okay. As mentioned, I graduated, from the University of Bradford. Okay, 1986. I started in the color business, right? It's 40 years. Okay, time's flying. Okay. And I have to look back right now. What is the most enjoyable to perform the research? Is color is multidisciplinary. Okay. Engaging with designers, that is absolutely, enjoyable. Okay. The product, represents the strengths of each country. Okay. And here we got Apple, right? Apple represents USA. Honestly. Okay. So, designer is very important. Yeah. And your product represents not just your own, but also the strengths of your country. Okay. And then what is our color science coming to play then? Color science, we call the color engineering. So what do? We provide the tools. We give you the best equipment, weapons to design your product. This is how the whole thing is linked together. Okay. So I've been working with the textile industry. I've been working with the coating, 3C, imaging, all this. Okay. So today's my talk is going to be color communication from the design to productions. Okay. How we can bring the color designer's idea and then we formulate and then we come out in a product. We try to reduce the design circles from weeks to days. Okay, so that is all about it, right? So
You ready to start?
yeah, okay. So I will divide this into three. Color is important, right? You got you will find, right, always in this the product circles, right, and the designers being left out. Okay, designers are found the most vulnerable, but the others like brand or dyers or the manufacturers, they are all well equipped. Okay, so that's the reason why, right, is this product is basically, right, thinking how we link this color invention or color exploration designers and also color specification. This is the brand, and then finally, right, is the color manufacturing. The dyers, the color manufacturers. Okay. So firstly, right, is look, during the COVID, okay, this global supply chain broken down because, right, we do not have good weapons or tools to help each other. Okay. So we lock at home, and then right is manufacturing is stopped. All this. But can we get something together? Okay, so it's so how can we make the designers, the brand, and the dyers working together? Okay, so the first, right, this is what designers do. You think about the right is what is the design? This is all in your mind. You go out, you collect all the samples. You try to to reproduce this, and to show your customers, your clients, right, is saying, look. This is my idea. This is my storyboard. Okay. And then they look at it. Oh, I got the leaves here. Right. I got look at this marble. Right. And I got all different materials. Okay. And then, right, they will find a long period try to find, this, materials.
Changing on the TV for some reason.
Oh,
I don't know why.
but that one's working. The one in the back is working, yeah?
Now they're working. I guess
Oh,
I
they're
just
working.
didn't like to be in full screen mode. I think
Okay. So you look at this, right? It's, many designers here. I hope it's right, okay? Because we investigate, we do the marketing survey, okay? You got all these materials and you go to the dyer. The dyers, right, dye up the samples, and 50% of the samples say not dyeable because, we don't have the right color range, all this, okay? The final one is in the bottom right. This is the palette. This is, I borrow from Martin Spencer's palette, right? It's, I have an agreement with them. Okay, look at 24 in the 6x4. So these are the colors you select. Okay, and then this is what the problems, right? If you use the color chart and the large color gap in between is bulky, is you have to use a standard light source, easy to be damaged, is a poor color reproduction, different versions disagreed. And most important, right? No guarantee for successful color reproduction. You give to the dyers, frightened of you because, right, 50% of samples that you gave to me always not be able to dye up, not be able to really, right, becomes the swatches. And finally, right, is unknown final textures of the final product. You know the color, but you don't know the color put onto what textures to form your final product. So this is right, is the problem. And then, right, we're talking about, brand. So this is right, is, and say Adidas, okay? And they have the problem. Why? Because this process overall is the iterative. You got a brand, you coming in, right? You need to find the source. This is cotton, this is nylon, this is the material. And then you go to the vendors and the mills. So it's a lot of, right, what we call the, right, is iterative decision to be made, okay? So you start from the beginning, then you got a palette. Finally, right, you got the swatches with the reflectance. This give to dyers. This is exactly what I want. Please dye it up, okay? And now, right, we're talking about the color manufacturing, okay? And for the dyers, right, they always say, I have the best, spectrophotometers, best equipments, okay? Fine. I measure the reflectance, and then 50% of the product is measurable. What I'm saying is flat, it's uniform. You must have these samples to be able to measure. But you look at the real world, 50% of samples, they are not measurable. Too small, they are non-uniform, they are curved. Okay, and all this, right, causes the problem. So what is the solution, right? So, and after the survey, this is, an 8-month survey. It's almost right, it's 50, at the companies that being visited, by, we work with the designers, okay? The company send, the information and collect this information to us. What do they want? Number one, I like to invent the colors or create the colors in a seamless, tool. So I want to, I don't want to say my colors between these 4 or 8 colors. I want to find exactly that colors, okay? Number one. Number two, right? I have to guarantee all the palette I provide is dyeable, is achievable, okay? And the third, right, is I can visualize the actual virtual samples very close to the final product, okay? From the dyer's point of view, right, they are saying, I want what I call the WYSIWYG, what the color difference reported by the instrument. The data is 1, but I don't want to see the very large color difference in the viewing cabinet, okay? This is right, it's not disagreement between what you see and what the instrument to report. And then, right, reduce the number of lab dips. Each lab dips $100 to $150, okay? I gave the dyers, I got 24 colors. So it's not just the one for $100 because they have to do the lab dip. The first time it's wrong, I can correct until I got the final one. So once you add up all this together, it's a very expensive, very slow the process. And compare the target and the physical samples. the dais, right, I want to see this is right, the virtual sample designers want, and this is what I die up. I want to compare them side by side and give them a close match. Okay. So this is the beginning, right? Then right, we developed the product. This product called LED simulator. I never liked this, right? I never liked the name LED simulator. And Keith Hoover, the guy, we worked together. Okay. Gave the talk the last night in his posters, okay, is this systems, okay? Okay, so that simulator is bad, okay? Sorry, that simulator is good. The name is bad, okay? People don't understand, okay? So now, right, it's in front, okay? We have a, viewing cabinet, okay? We can change the illuminant, the light source, etc. And in the back, right, look, this is in front. And then this is in the back, we have the two panels project the light to the white fabric. So we can keep changing the white and the substrates, and we can project the light onto the white substrate. So we produce a colorful, and the virtual samples, okay? This is the technology behind it. What is the theory behind it, right? It's very simple, right? So we project, what you see, the colors is white light on colored material. And now we are project the colored light into the white substrate. And as far as we get the XYZ color science equal, then it means, right, we successfully reproduce the samples. So between systems, right, they need to be very accurate. So we have the systems in the designer, for the designers, for the, brand and also manufacturers, they need to be within 0.25 mean color difference, data E2000s, okay? Colorway, seamless, right, is a color selection. It's a combination of the three. Number one, right, is a color ring from the NCS. I believe, right, NCS is the best, hue, cycle as introduced this morning, the 100% red, green, yellow, and the blue. So you can select the hue very easily. And then you go to the right, is the Mount cells, chroma and the value. And then this is the final selection areas. You can zoom in, you can zoom out. So you can form the right, is a seamless, color range, okay? So this is right, you can do it in a D65, you can do in the TL84, you can do the Illumina A, okay? So once you change the light in front, okay, now I'm going to Illumina A. So this, computer screen changes, and then you can select the color here. Once you select the color in the window, the light projecting to the white substrate changes. That is your final virtual product. So now, right, you need to use this system. Firstly, you select light source, and you select the texture. And then you got the input from the instrument, or you do the visual match using the colorway. Once you are happy, you store the source, you store the LAB values, and also reflectance go with it. The reflectance go to the dais, they get the recipes. So here you can see the physical samples there comparing with your virtual product, okay? So this link the whole things together from the color design to brand, and finally, right, we produce the final samples. So this is right, is the most important, right, is we can reduce the original design cycles from weeks to 3 days, okay? So that is what is happening now, okay? Finished my presentation, thank you.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, let me get that going.
Thank you very
Should I
much.
share my screen?
Yes,
So,
please.
Okay.
Maria, I will introduce you. So Maria Olkkonen holds a PhD in natural sciences from Justus Liebig University, Gießen, and is currently a principal color scientist at Microsoft, as well as an adjunct professor at the University of Helsinki. Before joining Microsoft, Dr. Olkkonen worked as a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Pennsylvania and Rutgers University, and as an assistant professor at Durham University, UK. Her research focuses on human visual perception with a specialization in color perception and color constancy. She's especially interested in how short and long-term memory affects and interacts with the perception of color. She uses behavioral methods to investigate perceptual responses to images and to quantitatively characterize the computational mechanisms of perception. She's a co-founder of the UK-based Color Collective and a member of the Finnish Color Group. So we welcome Maria today to tell us about the role of context and memory in color experience. Take it away.
Thank you for that nice introduction, and thanks so much for inviting me to speak here. Please let me know if you can't hear me or if the slides are not advancing. I will let you know when I start going through the slides, so let me know if they don't advance. About the basics of color perception, after which I will show data from 2 studies showing the effects of context and memory and prior knowledge on color perception. So especially for trichromatic individuals, so individuals that possess 3 different photoreceptor types, most humans do, about 90%. Color really helps us detect objects, especially red objects or orange objects among foliage. So in this picture, it's much easier to detect the fruit in the right side image if you are trichromatic. So dichromatic individuals, so-called red ring colorblind, might have more difficulty spotting the red fruit. Color also helps us identify object properties, in this case, edibility. In the black and white image, it's difficult to see which tomatoes are ripe, but in the bottom image where I show the tomatoes in color, it's pretty easy to say which tomatoes you would choose. Color also helps us perceive health in skin. So for example, in this case, the greenish face looks a little bit unhealthier than the reddish face. And of course, color is a means of self-expression and identification for humans. So as Isaac Newton discovered in the 17th century, by using a prism, sunlight, white sunlight contains all colors. So he put sunlight through a prism, and then he saw the rainbow, and he realized that colors are actually in the light. So we can deduce that we see white when we are stimulated by equal intensities of all wavelengths in the visible spectrum. And we can see color when we are stimulated by only a portion of the spectrum. And I'm showing here the portion of visible light. So visible light is just a small fraction of all electromagnetic radiation, up from about 400 nanometers to 700 nanometers. Color vision starts when light enters the eye through the lens and hits the retina in the back of the eye, where it activates the light-sensitive photoreceptors. And this is an image of actually my retina. So if you have had a fundus image taken, you might have seen something like this. And when I blow it up, you can see the structure of the retina. There are 6 layers of neurons or cells, and the cone and the rod photoreceptors are at the back, and I'm showing them here. You don't have to worry about the details here. I'm just sort of showing where it happens. So color vision and vision in general starts when light activates the rod and the cone photoreceptors. So we can see color because we have 2 or more cone photoreceptors in the retina that are sensitive to different parts of the wavelength spectrum. And this was discovered by Schnapp et al. In 1987 with physiological measurements. And in this graph, I'm just showing the sensitivities of the 3 different cone types across the wavelength, and also of the rods, which are only sensitive in dim lighting. So they don't participate in color vision in normal cases. As I already mentioned, a typical human retina contains 3 different cone types. A cone that's sensitive to long wavelengths, middle wavelengths, and short wavelengths. And these are usually called L, M, and S cones for short. Some individuals are missing the gene that codes for the M or the L cone opsin, in which case they are missing this cone type, and they are dichromats, or also called red-ring colorblind. And this affects their ability to discriminate colors, but they still see some color, so they are not completely colorblind. Okay, so we talked about perceiving the color of light. How do we perceive the color of objects? So for example, the color of this clover. This is actually a little bit more complicated because we see object color through light that is reflected to the eye from object surfaces. So this light signal is actually a combination or a mixture of the surface property of the object and the illumination spectrum. And here I'm showing the light signal that is entering the eye from the clover when we are viewing it either in sunlight or in shade. And you can see that the two curves are very different. And this just means that the sensory signal at our retina is very different to the same object when we are viewing it under two different illuminations. And this is actually a pretty hard computational problem for the brain to solve because the goal of color perception is to estimate object color and not the spectral content of the incoming light, which would vary for the same object when we view it under different illuminations. And because this is such a computational task, we can come up with different illusions and context effects that sort of reveal these computational processes that are occurring in the brain. And this is already by now a pretty old phenomenon, but I like the dress so much in this context that I want to show it. So I'm sure all of you have seen the dress and you might have an opinion of whether it's a blue and black or a white gold or a violet gold dress. I personally always saw it as violet gold. Believe it or not, these two images are identical except for the background. So the lady and the dress are identical, but because of the background or the context, in one image, the dress actually looks more blue and black. That's the left one. And in the right image, the dress looks more white and gold. And I hope you agree with me that in this case, they actually do look different. So this is an illustration of how strongly color context affects the perceived color of an object. And especially in the case of the dress, this may be due to the prior assumptions we hold about the dress, how it is illuminated. So if we recall the original image, it didn't really have a background and it was a little bit unclear whether the dress was in shade or whether it was illuminated from the front. So whether it was illuminated from the behind or from the front. And people might have different interpretations about the illumination geometry. And that might actually lead to different percepts, individual percepts of the dress color. So more generally, prior knowledge plays a role in perception. We have prior knowledge about how the natural daylight varies. So skylight or shade is relatively more bluish than sunlight. Many typical objects have natural or typical colors such as bananas are yellow, ketchup is red, and so forth. And also we have pretty strong color categories that also vary across individuals and across cultures. So first I'm going to talk about a study where we studied the role of typical object color in color perception. What we did is we showed fruit on the display and we let people adjust the color of the fruit. Of course, they were only seeing the picture of the fruit. They were not seeing the distribution that is rotating on the right, but I'm just showing there what's actually happening to the pixels. So when people were adjusting the fruit to either red, green, yellow, or blue, we actually rotated the chromatic distribution. And people were also able to increase and decrease the saturation of the color. And their task was to first make the object look in its typical color. So in the case of the lemon, it would be make the lemon look like a typical lemon, yellow. And the other task was to make the fruit look gray, so devoid of any color. And we did this because if there is a bias in color perception caused by object identity, we would expect to see some biases in these adjustments. So for example, people might make the lemon more yellow than it actually is. And when they're adjusting it to gray, we might actually see some biases there too. So let me show the data for the banana. I show the typical banana yellow settings with the yellow dots for individual subjects and with the plus sign that is the average. But the more important results are the gray settings, which are marked with the gray dots. And you can actually see that there's a bias towards blue. So in this color space representation, the origin is at where the lines meet, and that would be 0 bias. And none of the individual dots are at the origin. So this means that every subject adjusted the gray banana to be slightly bluish, which is opposite from the banana yellow. And we interpret this to mean that when the banana was physically gray, so when the banana color was actually at the origin, people still saw it as a little bit yellow, and they had to cancel that yellowness by overshooting a little bit in the blue direction. So we conclude that the memory of a banana color actually affects how we perceive the color. We also ran the experiment with outline shapes, which are less realistic, and we got a smaller bias, meaning that the bias was not just caused by the concept of banana, but it was perceptual in nature. So this just shows the results for all photographs we used. So we got this overshoot from the black points. You can look at the colorful symbols below the black dots. And all of the fruit were sort of overshot this neutral point, but we didn't find the same effect for outline shapes. I will quickly talk about another study that we did where we studied the role of color categories in color memory. Basically, the question is, when you see a shirt, if you think it is blue, does it turn even bluer in your memory? If you think it's green when you see it, does it turn even greener in your memory? What we did is we showed subjects colors for a short time. Then there was a 900 millisecond delay. And after the delay, people had to click on a color wheel to choose which color did you see. And if there's no bias in color memory, they should basically find the right color every time. And I'm showing the results here. The color of the stimulus varies on the x-axis and the bias is on the y-axis. And if there's no memory bias, all the data points will be on the 0 line. But and also we measured category centers. So for example, this is the red category center. And we plot the category centers here so that we can see if there is any bias towards or away from the category centers. And as you can see, there is a strong bias. So the data points are definitely not on the 0 bias line. And let's look at the bias a little bit closer. If you look at the colored dots between the yellow and the green category, they are sort of yellowish green. They were biased towards the green category center. So this vague yellowish green color was remembered as more green as it actually was. And the same was true for bluish green. So bluish green was also biased towards the blue category center. So we can conclude from this that categories strongly influence how we remember color. So this is my last slide. Let me summarize. Color vision is enabled by comparing the activation across 2 or more types of photoreceptor. However, color appearance of objects depends on more than just retinal processing, as we have seen. Color context, prior experience with objects and illuminance, and color categories all affect how color is perceived and remembered. And this might explain individual differences in color perception and memory. So of course, if people have different types of photoreceptors in their retina, that will cause individual differences, but also our experience with the world and the way we memorize things can also affect how we perceive color. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maria. That was excellent. We are going to turn it over to our third speaker, and then we'll open it up for questions from people in the room here and then people online on Zoom. So our third speaker, Bill Fischer, is a professor and founder of the Digital Art and Design program at Kendall College of Art and Design and executive producer for the EPIC project, which is a media production and research initiative. He's also the author of the ICU Blueprint for Creating Inclusive, Social-Emotional, and Entertaining and Universal Media. So please welcome Bill Fischer.
Okay. Hello again, everyone. So I just handed my phone to those bright students over there who will share it with you when they're done. And that is running an app that simulates what it's like to be colorblind, red-green colorblind. So you can look around the room and have that experience. So there's quite a few people here. So everybody gets maybe 30 seconds. Maybe you share it, look at it together. Right, already introed me, so I don't have to do that. So this will be some of these slides, many of these slides will be the same that I showed on Monday. But what this is a lesson. Oh, I'm not sharing. Right. The thing that throws me off is this doesn't look like that. Okay. Don't need sound. That should work better, I hope. Okay. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay, so what this is a lesson. So this is going to be a real brief overview of the lesson. The detailed lesson is there's going to be a link to it in the last slide. So anybody that, if you can use Photoshop, even just the basics of Photoshop, you could go through this lesson and learn quite a bit about how to apply universal design to your projects, to anything really. And I use Bloom's taxonomy. Anybody who's a teacher knows about that. And it's free and it's available at icu.info. That's my blueprint for design. And you can use it to teach your students if you like as well. So I usually start out with an anticipatory set. So this is how I teach, the introduction to this universal design concepts. And this is designed to build empathy. And we did this on Monday, so I'm not going to do it here again. But what I do is I ask the class these 7 questions, and there's, have you or someone have color blindness or a migraine episode that causes light sensitivity, not been able to pursue a profession because of color blindness. And this is my guaranteed finger. Had situations where colors, images, or text were difficult to see on a phone due to bright outdoor light or dim screen. I gotta get at least 1 finger out of everybody. So I asked them to do that, and sure enough, there will be 4 to 6 fingers up for every person in the room. And so what that does is kind of connect, your students to kind of what we're talking about. And then I will have them do read the pages on the website that pertain to attainability, responsiveness, and cognitive load management. These are my 3 kind of foundational principles whenever I'm applying universal design. You can use a quiz or a written exam to kind of test their knowledge on that in terms of whether or not they actually read the material and understand it. And I'm going to go through the material really quickly here. So attainability, we have color systems, among other things. And compare the RGB and CMYK color systems. RGB is much more chromatic, more saturated, can cause problems for people with light sensitivity issues, which is 20% of the population. So if we limit to the CMYK color gamut, we can go a long ways to, not doing what I call color shouting, which is I see a lot of color shouting and colors going on the internet these days with, illustrations and that, the designer's just cranking it all the way up, Scotopic sensitivity syndrome. This is supposed to vibrate, but it's a PDF and GIFs don't work on it, I found out. So yeah, really high contrast things, about 1% of the population, they will vibrate, or things like dotted lines, that sort of stuff. And of course, we have color blindness. This is what color blindness looks like. It looks like what you're going to see on the phone as it gets moved around. But this is a color scheme that I'll talk about more later on the left that color typical person would see. On the right is how that would be perceived by a colorblind person. Red, green colorblind, that's 99.999% of colorblindness. In the center is a simulation of what might be considered half colorblind or 50%. Most people are on a spectrum between the two. Okay, so only a little over 0.5% of the population is fully red-green colorblind, 2.5%. Deuteranomaly, there's also protoanomaly, protanopia, and that's very similar to deuteranopia. They're both considered red-green colorblind. Okay, we have low vision. That's just, you know, low, this is what it is, blurry. You can see you can read some of these words and some of them you can't. And then we have 40% of the population, if you add up these percentages, 4.5% colorblindness, 1% low vision, 20% photophobia, and 14.5% scotopic sensitivity syndrome. That photophobia largely comes from persons with migraine. It comes right along with it. And there's certain forms of migraine where you don't have the pain, you just have the light sensitivity. Then we have situational disabilities. That's, everybody's familiar with the battery save mode on their phone that makes everything dim, and then trying to look at your phone screen outdoors. These are situational disabilities. There's many more besides that. So we have this idea of responsiveness. And so what we can do is develop color schemes that will respond to persons' disabilities. This is the whole idea of accessibility and universal design. Our product should respond to people, not the other way around. So this is a color scheme as it is viewed by a color typical person. Here we have what it would look like simulated, red, green colorblind, yellow, blue colorblind, very rare, and grayscale. This is some art that me and my students made using these color schemes, and this is how they translate into red, green colorblindness. And I think this, we have tested all of the themes many, many times. I feel pretty confident that these themes translate and respond quite well. This is a color palette. You know, when I first got into this topic, I thought, gee, am I supposed to just design with yellow and blue? Like, is that the new design world? Oh my goodness, you know, that's a shock. But anyway, I got over it and I thought, well, what is this color palette? It's a little janky looking because I saved it as an 8-bit graphic to save space. This is a color sheet that we use to calibrate our displays in our labs. And this is what it looks like to a red-green colorblind person. So what I did is I left all the colors, and all I did is I desaturated the colors to kind of match best I could with my eyeball saturation here. So we're still using all the hues, but they're just desaturated. And this is a test. I've done quite a few tests, but this is these are the colors that I chose. This is what they look like, the color typical person. This is a colorblind simulation. And this is, when you think about cognitive load and cognitive load management, we think about visual hierarchy. This is an illustration of a boy with purple, blue hair and a green shirt. So I wanted to translate that way. I want the red-green colorblind person to see a boy with, you know, blue hair and a green shirt. Because if you have a complex image, that visual hierarchy starts to really matter. Now, this is a very simple image, but when you have hundreds of elements in an image and you want 6 of them to be at the top of the visual hierarchy and these other 20 to be in the middle and another 30 at the bottom, then, you know, to be able to sort the image or the layout out, it becomes very important. There's some legal requirements. These are mostly for websites, but or anything that's delivered on the web, any image, any video, whatever. So that's a lot. So there are some laws about that for the ADA, and mostly apply to educational media, courses and exams, web page access, television programming, messaging, general services, places of education. We're getting federal funding. You're supposed to be accessible. occupational barriers, over 11 million jobs test for color blindness. By my estimation, half of them wouldn't necessarily need to do that if we just designed things to be responsive. Here's some case studies. We saw these before. You can see, this is my favorite one, American Gothic. Thought that background could be a little bit different color to let those silhouettes pop out more. And then we apply these simulations. So what I have students do is just take something that is low contrast they can carry around with them and try different room lightings, take their phones, take it outside, put it on dim, maybe take a colorblind test just to see what that's like. That should be optional. And then we analyze things. So I have them take one of the color schemes and actually adjust it to make a new color scheme. So that's just kind of manipulating the colors, manipulating the concept. And then we can evaluate that color scheme. So I have them test their new color scheme with the simulators. I have them test the contrast to make sure their new color scheme they made is legally compliant. And then we create something new. So I have them find something or take a work of their own and see what it looks like. Find something that's kind of failing a little bit at least, or mostly in the translation, and then have them manipulate the colors to create something that is more responsive for red and colorblind people. And that is the end. This link down here, you want to take a picture of it, that takes you to the full lesson plan, which is far, far more detailed than what I just did here. Yeah, that's it.
Great.
Okay, so do you want me to close this?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you so much, Bill. So with the color literacy forums, the idea is to connect with educators. And we decided on this topic of color perception, and we've seen this image. Do you want to just make it so we can see everybody?
Oh, I think I can do that. Yeah, that's a good idea.
So we've seen this image where we have a light source, we have an object, we have a person with an eye and a brain, and those are the things that are involved. So we've heard about from Maria today how we perceive color, and it's more than that, right? It's context is everything. Context is very important. Memory is important. And we've heard about how we can, use what we know about color and color perception in order to make products. And we've heard about how. Are we good?
How to do that.
Oh, Maria is on Spotlight, so I don't know how to change that.
See, what's on my screen is different from here. I don't know how to do it.
Okay. Yeah, so yes, you can wave. That's good. So we've seen also what we need to do if we want to design things and take, a big chunk of the population into account. So right now we're going to open questions up to our panel, and we can Ingrid, I'm going to ask you every once in a while if you could find the chat box and just maybe we'll ask.
See, the Zoom's running through.
Sure.
One question, and we may just have to live with this.
Well, let's try that button.
We're just sorting some technical issues in the classroom here.
You might want to go ahead because I don't know if I'll be able to
Okay.
solve this.
You want to just put up the page of the presentation?
Maybe,
That's
yeah.
just better to look at.
You see how it looks
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's that one.
That's one.
And
Share screen.
share. Yep. There you go. This will be that one now.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
All right, so maybe I'll take a question from the room. Jean?
Question is for Ronnie, and it has to do with the comparison of the virtual to the physical. Are you proposing a different delta E value, or are you using some other criteria to prove the final virtual to physical?
Okay, one sec. Did the Zoom land hear Jean's question, or do you want me to repeat it?
Could you
Can you
repeat
please
it?
repeat? I couldn't, yeah.
Okay, so I say it in chunks and I'll repeat it because I can't remember it.
I was asking him in the final comparison of the virtual image
It-
that was developed to the physical object that they received.
Okay, so in the final comparison, or do you want to repeat the question? Because you'll know it better.
Yeah, it's
wanna stand here?
we're saying, right, it's in the textile tray, we use the CMC 2:1. This is the color difference equation. Okay. So if this is the designer's, right, it's the target, it gives to the dyer. Dyer needs to have the, a good match. Let's say this is the another sample is being produced, but the color difference between these two should be very close, right? CMC 2:1 and the 1 delta E is being used almost throughout the US industry. Okay. So your question is right, because one's the virtual, the other one's the physical. Sure, this equation to be changed, or the delta E should be bigger or smaller. Okay. So yeah, it is right. It's we don't change. We still use CMC 2:1. Okay. Yeah, still use the CMC 2:1. The problem facing the dyers, right? You always get a number. You don't see the final color. But now, because of virtual sample, you can put them side by side. Okay, so and we are still using the CMC, the conventional color control process. Yeah.
So are you calling the fabric LED light on a virtual sample?
Yeah, yeah.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah.
Sorry.
So it's the light projected to the white substrate is we call the virtual samples. We send this information to the Adidas, to the the Anta, and then they send it to the dyers. They dye up the samples. This is the physical samples. This is the virtual samples, or sometimes they call it virtual standard.
There's some, most people, when you say virtual sample, it's each image on a screen.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's very good, questions, right? You're saying now we have the, color on screen. The other one is the, color projected, on the real fabrics, because the colors on screen can never be truthfully represent that texture, and effect. Okay.
Okay, Ingrid, could you ask a question from the chat?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, so there is a question for Ronnie also, and it is, do you think it makes a difference whether people match color within a medium, for example, paper to paper, or across media, computer screen to paper?
Yeah, so we're talking about the right across media. So what I'm saying, right, the people in the, let's say, printing industry, you print the image, but then the image, right, is displayed on the screen as well. So this is what we call the soft proofing. You don't need to produce the real samples side by side. You are comparing with the screen colors and your printed, paper. Okay, so it's and then I'm sorry, I forgot your question. I'm sorry. And what you are saying is a cross media. Yeah, it is a cross media color reproduction. Do I answer your question?
Maria?
Yeah, so it was actually my question.
Yeah.
This is Maria. I'll just quickly elaborate. So I was just wondering, because in the setup you showed, people are comparing colors on a computer screen and in the real world. And I was just wondering if you do get different results if people just compare.
Yeah. Okay.
Like apples to apples.
Yeah, yeah.
I understand what your setup is, but I was just wondering if that makes a difference.
Yeah. The color on the screen is not important. The color on the screen is a manipulator and allow you to change the color to the virtual samples in that small square. Yeah.
Okay.
The color, yeah, the software on the screen, right, is just allowed us, right, to change color directions. But the real important is what you see in that, virtual samples.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have a question from the room? Yeah.
I have a question for Maria about the shifting of the yellow banana went to grayscale and there's a bias towards blue. And my question is maybe this was covered and I missed it, but I'm curious curious as to why that may be. And I'm wondering, is there something with color memory that was creeping in unconsciously, and observers were compensated for that, maybe unconsciously?
Okay, so question was for Maria with the yellow banana example and where people were rendering it more neutrally and the blue creeps in. How would the role of color memory play in their response?
Yes, thank you. So color memory is involved because, of course, the idea is that you remember the typical color of the object, and we think that it has some kind of a direct effect on how the color of the banana on the screen is perceived. So when people are trying to make the banana look gray, I think they are doing this sort of unconsciously or unawares. The fact that they remember the typical color of the banana makes the gray banana look a little bit blue. And that's why they have to compensate. So they are viewing the banana all the time. So it is not the kind of memory task where we took the banana away and then we ask what was the color. So short-term memory shouldn't play a role, but definitely memory processes play a role. But the reason why we think it's a perceptual effect is that we don't get the same bias when we just show an outline of a banana that basically has the same semantic content or informational content as the photograph. So you need to see the sort of realistic looking photograph of a banana to get the effect. I hope this answers the question.
Ingrid, any questions from the chat?
Yes, we have another question for Ronnie. It is made by Robert, and he asked if this system is already available commercially.
This system was announced in Italy, ITMA last week. Okay, so it's announced to the whole textile industry, and next week we are going to the Portland. So there will be a industrial seminar. There will be 6 textile companies, the brand to attend. If you are interested, right, go to the Oregon University the next week, right? It's the Thursday and Friday. Okay, yeah. Portland, Oregon University. Yeah, it's a textile and sportwear and textile department.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, really? All right. Thank you, Maggie.
Yeah.
A follow-up question from Maria. When they did the outline and did not see the overcorrection effect, was it a solid color chromatic effect? Because a real banana has subtle shades and little black lines, something so you read, you know it's a real banana. So did they use the same coloration or just a solid yellow color?
So question for Maria, when they just, with the banana episode, when it was a solid color banana, did they modulate it? Is that the question? When it was just the outline, was it a simple solid color rendered?
Yes, yeah. So that was the difference. So basically the outline really just had one color over the whole surface and people were just changing that one color because otherwise it would have had some kind of texture and we didn't want that. So it was a more simple surface than the surface of the photograph.
Do you ever try doing just words like the word banana and get them to color it?
Yeah, that's a great question. We actually, so we didn't do that, but we could have. But I think that that's a little bit, that's sort of similar to the Stroop task, which has been, so I think that some people might have done it for some fruit. But since we didn't get the effect for the outline, I think we wouldn't get it for the word, but because we didn't try that, I can't say for certain, but I would imagine that we wouldn't get the memory color for text.
Any questions from the room? Peter?
Question for Bill. I love that you're using accessibility as part of your design curriculum, but my question was, why is part of your solution to the palette to desaturate the color?
So question was to Bill, why is part of his technique the choice to desaturate colors for his palette?
Right, so if you think about color carries information, and the chroma of the color will make that whatever information it's denoting a banana. Let's say you have six fruit on the screen and you want to talk about the banana right now. So you want that to rise to the top of the visual hierarchy, and have more chroma than everything else. Well, it's pretty easy to do with yellow because red-green colorblind can see yellow just fine. But if it's an apple, that's more difficult. How do you get that apple, to all of a sudden have more chroma than the other fruit? Well, you can shift the color of the apple towards yellow, kind of towards orange, until it doesn't feel like it could even be red anymore, so you can cheat it. And then you have to diminish the chroma of everything else to pop out. It's by that idea. And so you might think, well, gee, I'm gonna have a very limited ability to create colorful experiences. And that's what the color themes, because I thought that too. I had this palette, I'm like, oh my God, what kind of world am I making here? But so I have 16 color themes so far. And we've been able to make quite colorful experiences within the realm of the leftover saturated colors that we have. And I want to do more testing, but yeah.
So following up on that, it wasn't clear at first when you did the desaturation, was that in order to simulate color blindness or to facilitate color blindness perceiving the color?
That actually, yeah, so you asked, there's another question about why I desaturated the colors, and if it was for colorblind people. It's universal, so it's for everyone. So color typical people see some color, and colorblind folks don't necessarily see that color, but because the color is diminished, they're not losing the signal. They're not losing whatever work that chroma was doing because it was diminished in the first place.
So my experience is that colorblind people have trouble discriminating colors when they're desaturated. The more saturated they are, the more signal they get. So I was expecting you to say, to boost the red and green so that there's more signal for red and blue.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the question is, why don't you just pump up the red, to its maximum side? Why don't you shout at me with red, right? Except that 20% of us have episodes of photophobia, and then you're causing light sensitivity issues. So you'd be solving one problem and creating another.
So in applied universal design, there's a lot of color designers and color forecasters here at Color Impact 2023. So what is, if not the most accurate, what is the fastest, easiest way for out in the field or what have you, for color designers and forecasters to test for color blindness in their color palettes?
Actually, that app, by the way, where is my phone? Hey, did I get any emails? Anyways, yeah, like this free app, the Color Vision Simulator app, is available for iPhone and Android. You just run around, just look at things through it. And you could even, if you're working in product design, you could, manipulate your physical prototypes while you're looking at them through the app. And then you can flip back and forth and do comparisons. So you can have the red, green colorblind. I didn't do this, set it up for you, but you can have the red, green colorblind next to the color typical, right? Side by side. So you could be adjusting your physical products and seeing both versions simultaneously and trying to, there's some compromise involved, right? To find that middle ground.
Let's take from the Zoom world.
Quick follow-up to that.
Okay, quick follow-up.
I mean, would there be something like a Photoshop plugin you could use
There is photo. Yeah, well, if you go to the lesson, there's a whole page of tools. Photoshop has it built in, and there's Chrome apps, and there's or extensions and native apps. There's all kinds of ways. Yeah.
One year. Kind of a red, green colorblind, but there's really performance, right? Weak on the red or weak on the green.
That's right.
And in your simulator, they look different, right? Because one, the green looks bad, and one, the red looks bad.
Actually, they're pretty similar.
So they're
Very,
talking
very
about,
similar.
they're
That's
talking about
yeah.
red-green color blindness, I'm
Yeah.
in quotes, whether it's affecting the L cone or the M cone, and that,
Yeah.
how does that play a role?
Yeah, yeah, they're very similar. What I found is that if you get a scheme that's really responds well, whether you test it first in deuteranopia or protanopia, it will work very well in the other. It's when you get colors that are not very responsive that you will see more difference between the weak green and the weak red.
Simulator.
It will do both. It has both. All the simulators have both. Yes, but that is an important point to make. Thanks for making that. Yeah.
I have a question for Ronnie, actually. How do you take the variations of color vision in your program? Yeah.
Great job.
Do you want to go by the mic by the computer?
Yeah, so we investigate, right? It's the 60% of the mobile phone companies, right? Almost 100% of mobile phone companies provide this the color deficiency, correction program. Okay, and in which, right, it's the 60% of them, okay, do this. So what do they intend to do, right? Change hue. The easiest way, right, is to give you images, right? You try to improve the color discrimination, is change the hue, okay? Because, right, is the, we know red, green is gone. We only have the yellow and the blue to manipulate it, right? But the consequence of that, right, is disasters for the color deficiency people, right? They lost, where's my banana? This looks like banana. But this hue changes, okay? So that is, right, is saying, right, is better, right? It's not over correct the hue, but also, right, is you need to combine the we do what we call the gamma mapping, reduce the chroma, okay, and then change the hue and keep the original hue as much as possible, okay. Otherwise, right, is they can see all the colors, no problem, but try to get right is what is that object? The color meaning, color name is gone, okay, and also, right, and the tritanopia. We're talking about the protanopia and the deuteranopia. Very, very rare. This is a story. I'm inviting the one tritanopia from the other part of China, fly the first class all the way to the lab to do the experiment. Yeah, it will arrive the next week. So it's been, half a year trying to find the tritanopia.
Well, let me tell you, something that I found out, just I was surprised. If you optimize for red green colorblind, for some reason, it works for tritanopia too.
Yeah, okay.
I was surprised, but it's equally as effective for some reason.
Okay.
I haven't sorted that out yet.
We try to test it out, okay?
Yeah.
Tritanopia,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Ingrid, any questions from Zoom land?
Yes, actually, we have two questions for Maria. I go with the first one. Maria, it's a question from Nadia. Can color perception change according to mood?
That's a good question. I honestly don't know because I have never studied it, and I've never heard that it would. So there is sort of this theory in color psychology that color affects mood, but I haven't actually seen studies where it has been sort of rigorously tested. So the answer is I don't know.
Okay. And then we have a second question, which is from Harald. It is, how good are people at selecting a neutral gray in the first place, and how it is defined colorimetrically, perceptually? Is there a bias, any direction? Maybe there isn't any research on this?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And yes, we did measure neutral gray for neutral objects, disks. I just didn't show the data, but of course we measured the neutral settings for each individual observer because that actually varies across people. So some people prefer a bluer gray and some people prefer a slightly yellower gray. And we always, when we calculated the effect of typical object color, we also always took that as a baseline. So we always looked at their neutral setting for a neutral object, and then we looked, okay, how much bias do they have, let's say for the banana beyond that. So of course that has to be taken into account.
Thank you. And I will go with the last question we have in the chat, which is a question for Bill. It's a question from Robert, and he says, Bill, you have shown some simulations, but how do we know what a color deficient person sees?
Right. So we use simulators. There's a lot of different kinds of simulators. Unfortunately, there's some variation in the simulators, and Ronnie's going to tell me what the best one is right after the session. The most accurate. It's probably the one that they worked on. And but they're far more similar to each other than not. So I think they're quite useful. And so we can simulate all the three major, well, actually 6 major types of color blindness, because most people aren't completely colorblind, so we can get the in-between. So we use simulators to simulate what colorblind people can see. And we flip back and forth between color typical and simulated color blindness and adjust our colors and our layouts until they satisfy both.
So we can simulate it, but we can't really know what they see. We can understand what they can discriminate, but what they actually see is not really knowable.
Well, I think you could say that about color typical vision.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Everybody's vision is slightly different. So we don't want to, what's that saying? We don't want to throw out the good in pursuit of the excellence or something like, or the perfect, something like that. Like we think that these are the best tools we have at the time. And I can tell you that, you know, I have worked with a fair number of colorblind people, and even though I'm not sure exactly what they're seeing, they're liking what they're seeing.
Patch under good lighting conditions, colorblind person, they rate it, you know, it's like, oh, that's good, you know, on a visual scale, and then you take your simulated patch, just normal vision, and try to get the same rating.
Right. So yeah, that's a good idea. He was talking about, let's get some data, basically, which is why I am heading over to the color science lab right after this to see if there's an opportunity to, you know, put something together to try to quantify this as much as we can. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any last questions? We're wrapping. Okay, thank you. Maggie?
I just had one question for Ronnie, and that was, did I understand you to say that in the system you're measuring hue using NCS with lightness and chroma using myself?
So question was, in Ronnie's system, he's using hue with NCS and measuring value and chroma with Munsell. Do you want to come over here?
It is. So
Okay.
so the general idea, right? To select the color, we start from the hue. Hue is the easiest, you know, everybody understands. So we start from the hue, okay? And we did, you know, experiment, try to find, right, what is the best way to describe the hue, just like the, you know, Sadie, you know, she did this morning, okay? So NCS, right, talking about the 100% red, 100% green, and 100% yellow and the blue. And for everybody, right, the unitary hue are very, very similar, okay? It's been proven again and again. So you can use this, right, to find the hue. But then, right, once you get into the two-dimensional and the lightness and the chroma come into play, everybody familiar with the systems for many years. And once you select the color, you go to the fine selections and the LAB coming. So you can have the numbers and also, right, you can zoom in, zoom out. So it becomes the seamless. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you. Systems.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
last one, the designer is looking at NCS and picking their hue and then moving into Munsell. What if they have a reflectance curve? Yeah.
The reflectance curve, right? We have, special technology there, okay? So we use the database. We have 100,000 reflectance for the different materials. For textiles, right? We have 8,000, in which, right, 3 groups. One is the cotton, another one is nylon, another one is wool, and also polyester. So 3, And then once we got XYZ, we go into, we reconstruct the reflectance, have the characteristics of that in the particular material. Yeah.
All right, let's thank our speakers. And thank you all in Zoom land for joining us. We will have a recording of this available and we'll let you know, and stay tuned for our next Color Literacy Forum coming in September. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, Harold.
Bye-bye, everybody.
See those on campus over at Munsell.